Well, last week I let the congregation know that we were beginning a sermon series around themes of worship and fellowship and education, many of the same themes that the task force, which a session has brought together, is looking at and studying and discerning and praying about. This task force is eventually going to make a recommendation to the session about how Sundays may look around those themes of worship and education and fellowship. And last week, we talked about Moses and how Moses turned aside to the burning bush. And once God had Moses' attention, then God spoke out of the bush. Moses experienced the mystery of God, the wonder, love, and praise of God. And we are learning through a book by Tom Long, Beyond the Worship Wars, Building Vital and Faithful Congregations, that vital and faithful congregations are creating spaces where we can experience the mystery of God, the wonder, love, and praise of God. And that's our responsibility as leaders of the congregation, but it's also your responsibility to turn aside like Moses did so that we can be aware of those spaces. So today, with that in mind, we turn our attention to a second theme, that theme of fellowship or building community, that thing we all want, along with getting in touch with God, a sense of belonging. And today, we're going to talk about hospitality to the stranger is one of the ways that we find that sense of belonging. So let's listen to one of my favorite stories in Scripture from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, verses 41 through 52. It's one of the few stories we have of Jesus' boyhood, his childhood. He's on the cusp of being a teenager. So listen for the Spirit's movement in these words. Now, every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up, as usual, for the festival. And when the festival was ended and they started to return, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but his parents did not know it. Assuming that he was in the group of travelers, they went a day's journey. Then they started to look for him among their relatives and friends. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem to search for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Look, your father and I have been searching for you in great anxiety." He said to them, Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? But they did not understand what he said to them. Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was obedient to them. His mother treasured all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in years and in divine and human favor. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let us pray. Thanks be to you, O God, for the image of the 12-year-old Jesus. the boy Jesus, in the midst of teachers, in community, learning and listening, and amazing. Thanks be to you, O God, for your stories. And all God's people shall say, Amen. I smile most of the time when I read this story because I think all of us are so embedded in our culture. We look through our lenses to see this story, don't we? And I just, as a parent, I can feel my own anxiety going up when I read this story. And I don't know about you, all you folks who have raised children out there or taken care of grandchildren and had to keep an eye on young ones. But my first reaction is, Mary and Joseph, why in the world did you leave your child or leave Jerusalem without knowing where your child was? What is that? I mean, my helicopter parent senses are going berserk with this passage. I mean, there are thousands upon thousands of people in Jerusalem for the festival. I mean, people are coming from everywhere. Why in the world did you not find out exactly where your child was before you left? This is craziness. I mean, I get it that there are probably lots of friends and lots of relatives around, but hey, keep an eye on your kid. We look at this passage through our lens, our cultural protective lens. And I think they probably had a different lens. That was going through my head as I read it as well. But I'll tell you, as tempting as it is to have all our attention on that aspect of the story, there is a much more important central piece to this story. And that central piece is that Jesus is in the temple. And Jesus doesn't view it just as a temple. This is his parents' house. This is his Father's house. So that after 3 days, or however many days it was, when his parents finally find him, the central statement that Jesus makes, the first words that Jesus ever speaks, by the way, in a gospel, are so important. Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? And what is he doing in his Father's house? Well, we get such a beautiful picture of him sitting with the teachers in the temple, sitting among them. There is community. And isn't it wonderful that Jesus, the Son of God, is asking questions, is listening to the teachings of those in the temple. In the mystery of Jesus being fully God and fully human, isn't it beautiful that Jesus was a fully human 12-year-old, and that a community of faith surrounded his vigor to study the scriptures and to learn from the leaders of faith. And so they were taking the time to teach a 12-year-old. As amazing as he must have been, he was still a 12-year-old. And the community showed him hospitality by engaging his questions and teaching him. And then in turn, they were astonished, amazed by him. It's really a beautiful image of the hospitality that can be given by a community to strangers. even if the stranger is Jesus. Of welcoming them in when they are hungry to learn and engage the mystery of God and have a sense of belonging to a community. Tom Long, who is a preacher in the Presbyterian Church, I think he teaches now at Emory Divinity School in Atlanta. He's written the book that we are reading as a task force, Beyond the Worship Wars, Building a Vital and Faithful Community. He says there are three ways that a church needs to think about giving hospitality to the stranger. And the number one thing he says is people want to be welcomed into the household of God. And that's when I want you to hang on to that image of Jesus being surrounded by teachers who are enthusiastic about building up a young person's faith. Surrounding a young person or any person who is hungry to wrestle with the mystery of God. We need to be people who welcome others into the household of God. The second thing is people want to be known by name. They want to be known by name, which means all those name tags that are hanging out in the hallway right now need to be on your person so that people can learn your name. And then we need to be great at asking people's names and then going that extra step, remembering it. I know, that's the hardest part. So that they might feel valued. So they feel welcomed in the household of God, and they know when they come to Hudson Memorial Presbyterian Church that their name is known. The third thing that Long says is people want to bring their offerings. More than just tangible offerings. The offerings of their gifts. People want to come into a community and a community to say, yes, we see your gifts. We could use your gifts, and we want to embrace your offering that you have, and we want you to bring others of us along to bring forth your offering. And guess what? We've got wonderful people in this church who also are making offerings to God in the community, and we want you to make relevant offerings to the community and God with us. We need to be a community that says yes to people who come here who have offerings to give. Even if saying yes is a little bit inconvenient or a lot inconvenient, or we can't figure out how to get it through our meandering Presbyterian system, we need to be people who say yes. Welcome the people of God into God's house. Remember their name. Say yes to their offering. Invite them into the offerings that we make. And that's what makes a sense of belonging. That's what makes people helps them discover the mystery of God. That's what creates a sense of hospitality for the stranger. You know, I'm so glad that Vacation Bible School is back here at Hudson. We've had wonderful volunteers run it for the past 2 years. It's such a gift to the community. Do you know, out of about 60 kids that were a part of that, 24 of them were not members of the church. It's a ministry, a week of discovering faith in God that you all gifted to the community. Some of them were preschool kids who are very familiar with the building of Hudson and the education of Hudson. Some of them were friends of members, but there were 24 kids here who in some senses, weren't totally connected with the community of faith. And what a wonderful thing. And on the very first day, the memory verse that the kids were learning was Psalm 139, verse 1. O Lord, you have searched and known me. O Lord, you have searched and known me. Every day, the kids were learning a verse, by the way. And all the verses had to do with how, wherever they went, God was right there, or that they belonged to God, or that they were children of God. And Katie Waugh, who's actually upstairs with our children right now, was outside leading games. And games with kids. And the game she had time for went by pretty quick. And so Katie Waugh had to think on her feet, what game do I do now? And all of a sudden, she got a big ball. And she said, okay, Psalm 139, what we're going to do is every time you hit the ball, we're going to say a word in that verse. Oh, Lord, you have searched me and known me. And if the ball hit the ground, they had to start over. And I sat there and watched that and was just thrilled at the offering that was being given by Katie Waugh to children in this church and children who were just learning what church and God is about. What a beautiful offering to give. What hospitality to give to the stranger and to the one who has been here a long time. And you know what? We shouldn't make too much difference between the stranger, the one who comes for the first time, and us. Because at one time, we were the stranger. At one time, somebody in this community welcomed us. They learned our name. They welcomed our offering. I want to close with these words from Tom Long. The stranger at the door is a living symbol and memory that we are all strangers here. This is not our house, our table, our food, our lodging. This is God's house and table and food and lodging. We were pilgrims and wanderers and aliens and strangers, even enemies of God. But we, too, were welcomed into this place. To show hospitality to the stranger is, as Gordon Lathrop says, we are beggars here too. We are beggars here too. Grace will surprise us both. Amen.